This is the first of 2 weeks in which we're looking at the relationship between art and photography in the mid-19th century. The major questions that we're addressing is first, whether photography has a place in fine art exhibitions, and how do art photographers argue for the artistic merit of their photographs. Our goals here are to identify the major stylistic strategies that photographers use to demonstrate the artistic merit of their work in the 1850s and 60s in Britain. We are also going to be looking at artists' statements about their work as it relates to their acceptance as artists. So these are some wet collodion photographs, carte de visite photographs that we talked about last week. On the left, there's an image of Queen Victoria. On the right, the Comtesse de Castiglione. These are interesting and engaging photographs, and you can definitely make an argument that these are fine art. However, neither of these photographers, Miall or Pearson, were particularly interested in exhibiting this in a fine art exhibition. In contrast, Nadar argued that his photographs really were art. This is a cartoon made by the French artist Honoré Daumier. He's making fun of Nadar here. So Nadar had a hot air balloon that he used, and he took pictures of Paris from the air in his balloon. And so Daumier is making fun of him. He says Nadar is raising photography to the height of art. But Nadar, and if you remember, we kind of talked about this last week, his portraits are really pretty stunning, and he says that it's because of the way that he understands light. And so here's a quote from him. "What can't be learned about photography, it's the sense of light. It's the artistic appreciation of the effects produced by different and combined qualities of light. It's the applying of this or that effect according to the nature of the face that you have to reproduce as an artist." End quote. So what he's saying there is that really there is a skill involved in this, and that his portraits are good because of the artistic skill that he has. For this reason, he really wanted photography to be included in fine art exhibitions, but there was a lot of resistance to that. Here are two more cartoons about that idea. So on the left is a cartoon by Nadar that says photography asking for just a little place in the exhibition of fine arts engraving. This is from 1855, and it's like a anthropomorphic camera trying to get into the door that says exposition above it. So that's like up here is exposition. And then this is another cartoon by Nadar from 2 years later, and you've got this painting palette kicking an anthropomorphic camera stick figure out the door of the exposition of fine arts. So why do people resist putting photography in a fine art exhibition? I mean, today it would never occur to us that photography can't be an art form. But in the mid-19th century, there's this idea that photography is mechanical. You just take the cap off the lens and voila, your image appears. And so it can't be art because it's produced mechanically like a robot. There's also this idea that photography could be useful to art, but it's just not going to be as creative as drawing and painting, that it simply cannot demonstrate that level of creativity. There's a ton of criticism that's published during these decades about art photography. One art critic who's very vehemently against art photography is the aristocratic Lady Elizabeth Eastlake. She argues that photography is going to make everyone want things that are too true to life rather than beautiful. She criticizes photography as being too super realistic and mechanical to possibly be beautiful. She feels like calotypes could be artistic, especially the Rembrandt-like portraits of Hill and Adamson that we talked about last week. But there's also there's kind of a class criticism in here. She's elite, and she feels like photography cheapened art because it allows middle-class people to purchase images, both in terms of portraits of themselves, but also reproductions of famous artworks. And so kind of embedded within here is this idea that images really shouldn't be for everyone. Anyway, that's something that we'll continue to think about over the next week. Now, to contrast ideas like this, Many photographers say that photography really isn't different from etching or lithography or other reproductive techniques that are definitely considered fine art. And so it's going to be just as significant as them. Also, they argue that not all paintings are necessarily artistic. Just like a very good painting has to be truthful and beautiful and inspirational, these qualities can be applied to photography as well. So this week we're focusing on 3 different photographers and the strategies that they use to elevate their status to art photographers rather than just commercial photographers. So there's a technique that we'll be studying called composite photography, in which artists combine multiple negatives to produce a new image. Oscar Raylander and Henry Peach Robinson are really good at doing that, so we'll be learning about them. And then Julia Margaret Cameron takes this totally different approach, which we call de-skilling, in which she tries to take away the verisimilitude or the super realism of photography by making images that are intentionally kind of blurry. So here is your weekly module. You're listening to the introduction now. The readings are organized a little differently this week. So I've got a link to a Smart History article about Nadar. But then if you see, I've got a page for each of those 3 artists that I just mentioned. So I have a video also in the introduction page for you to look at on how to navigate the pages. But basically, I didn't want to have a million different links in this Canvas module, and so all of the different readings are embedded within that page, along with links to museums with lots of different examples of their work. The discussion is a series of analyses of 3 examples of their work. So I've got the 3 photographs at the bottom of this slide. And basically what you're going to be doing is building visual analysis of each of these examples. That's the first half of the week. On Thursday, I will update it with a new question that responds to the ideas that you put forward. The other assignment this week is about choosing quotations. So I have primary sources from Julia Margaret Cameron and Oscar Raylander. These are things that they wrote about making their art photographs. So I want you to read those texts, and then I want you to pull some quotes from them. You will be choosing 2 quotes from each example that are summaries, and then 2 quotes from each example that are arguments. So 8 quotes in total. And under the argument quotes, I want you to analyze that quote and say why it is significant and what Cameron or Raylander is trying to express in that idea, in that quote that you isolate. The final assignment this week is revising your photography, science, or art major writing assignment. So I will read the rough drafts just as quickly as I can. And then I really want you to look closely at my feedback. It's within the rubric. If you can't find my feedback, look in the Canvas orientation module under must reads. Your final draft is worth 15% of the grade. And I've graded the rough draft the same way I would grade a final draft. I do this so that you know what I'm looking for. And when I am grading your final drafts, basically I have 2 screens open. One is your rough draft, one is your final draft. And so I'm really just looking to see, did you do what I told you to do? How did you respond to my criticism? If you have any concerns about your rough draft, please do schedule an appointment with me. I would love to talk to you about your writing.